Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Zappe. Sarah is the Assistant Dean for Teaching and Learning and the Director of the Leonhard Center for the Enhancement of Engineering Education at Penn State. An educational psychologist by training, Sarah holds a uniquely interdisciplinary leadership role, working directly with engineering faculty to enhance learning, creativity, communication, and the overall student experience. She's also the first non-engineer to ever serve as Assistant Dean in the College of Engineering. Beyond academia, Sarah is the founder of Kaleidoscope PA, an arts-based wellness company that creates immersive, community-centered art experiences designed to support creativity, mindfulness, and well-being. Sarah, welcome to Expressions of Leadership. It's really wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, Sarah, when you think about the through line of your career, what feels most consistent about who you've been as a leader across all the different roles you've held?
That is a great question. And so I actually just gave this talk last week to students about my career journey, which was interesting because, like you mentioned in my bio, I'm not an engineer. I'm an educational psychologist, and I'm talking to a group of all women engineers and future engineers, I should say, about my career path. And what I told them is that and this is my kind of philosophy on things, is that I think that our lives are a combination of serendipity and then the choices that we make. Because, for example, I didn't know that this job was going to have an opening or that, where I met, somebody I might become in a relationship with, my then husband, or even where I end up, what houses are available when you go to buy one on the market. Like all of those are out of our control, but then there's the choices that you make. So it's like this weird combination of things. And I feel like kind of the thing that sticks with me over these years is that these random things, somehow the universe places in front of you and everything kind of turns out the way it's supposed to. Like this is kind of my philosophy on things. And I think like with all the decisions that I made and all the opportunities that came up, the one thing that really resonates is like being authentic, like, because you can't change who you are. And so to enter these experiences by bringing your full self as much as you're able to, and just being humbly who you are in those experiences.
And were there any early moments or decisions, either big or small, that quietly shaped how you lead today, even if you didn't recognize them as important at the time?
Yes, 100%. And for me, it's the most challenging things. The things that at the time I was like, don't know how I'm going to get through these things. It's the bad things that have shaped where I am. It's the things that were the most horrific at the moment that now I'm like, if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And that to me is very interesting. And not that I want to go back and relive those things, but at the same time, they're so critical. If I didn't have those, I wouldn't be who I am. Um, I also will say, like, the mentors that I've had along the way. I've had some great mentors that really helped me to grow my skills, grow my confidence, and get me to where I am.
And you became director 3 years ago. And you're also the first non-engineer to hold this assistant dean role. What was it like stepping into leadership in a space where you didn't fit that traditional mold?
It's challenging. It's challenging at times. And yet, I feel like it's also made because of that. I come in with these different perspectives. I will speak and provide my feedback when the time is right. And it also gives me confidence to do things in other areas of my life personally that I wouldn't have had confidence to do because I've always felt like a little bit like an outsider. And I'm okay with that at this point in my career. And the other thing I will say is that early on, I felt like I'm different. I'm not an engineer. Should I get an engineering degree just to be like everyone else, to have that extra credential? And then I realized no, because that's not who I am. And that's not why I have this job. I have this job because of the fact that I'm different, because I have those different perspectives and can bring them into the position. And and I think that because of that, there's been some initiatives in the college over the last year that wouldn't have flown 5 years ago, definitely wouldn't have flown 15, 20 years ago. And yet people seem to like them and they're things that are needed. Um, and I think it's because of my different perspective and background.
Can you provide an example of that?
Yeah. So my passion in recent years has become a lot with art and wellness. And I will say that higher education is in this space right now that's very challenging with the change in our administration. A lot of institutions feel like they're under attack. There's less federal funding. It's even getting international students, which many universities have relied on for income to stay afloat, is under attack now. And I will say, because of these many changes, budgets are tighter and everyone is stretched. And so they're asked to do more. The level of anxiety in our faculty and staff, it is higher than it ever has been. I would say, like, in the last year, it's like palpable. Like, you can see it, you can feel it among the faculty and our staff. And so, as part of our mission in the Leonhard Center, our mission is to enhance engineering education at Penn State. And for me, it's like the biggest piece of that is making sure that the environment is a healthy and safe space so that students can learn effectively and faculty can do their jobs effectively. And if it's an environment that people don't feel psychologically safe or they feel like it's very stressful and anxiety producing, they can't do their best work. So even though most teaching and learning centers, you think, okay, we're going to teach faculty how to teach better. We're going to teach them active learning. We're going to talk about how to do assessment of their students and so on. I started introducing a lot of mental health and wellness things because we can't have students learning as to the degree possible to the best that they can if our faculty are stressed and the environment's not right. So lots of things that happen there. We've had mental health first aid classes. Most recently, and I've had just a blast with this, I've been having Mindful Monday, where I do half-hour Zoom sessions every Monday morning. And it's just been joyful. Like every week, I mean, I'll be honest, I pick the topic each week that I need. So I'm like, well, I feel like, this week I'm just overwhelmed because, whatever, finals week or the holidays are coming. And so we're going to talk about overwhelm. And we would do 15 minutes of like some research and evidence about overwhelm, what it does to our bodies, and ways to combat it. And then the second half of that is we would do a 15-minute meditation and bringing in different techniques and strategies. And I love it. Like it just brings me joy. And people have written to me and said how helpful it's been.
Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about creativity, the arts, and what it really takes to integrate them into engineering education. Stay with us. True transformation starts from within. The Forward Project partners with organizations to create meaningful culture shifts and develop leaders who inspire real change. If your team is ready to move forward with purpose, visit www.theforwardproject.co. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Sarah Zappe, Assistant Dean for Teaching and Learning and Director of the Leonhard Center at Penn State. Now, Sarah, You're deeply passionate about bringing creativity and the arts into engineering. Why does this matter to you as a leader?
This is a great question. So, when I started working with the Leonhard Center, the things that really appealed to me right away were the more psychological side of teaching. And so I became very interested in anything where the psychology piece was coming in. I was less interested in how engineering students might best learn about free body diagrams, for example, or best learn statics or dynamics. I was like, no, that's not what is exciting to me. It was more creativity, leadership, global awareness, anything that we're trying to operationalize and define in a way that we can then measure it and measure the impact of it. But going back to your question about why creativity is important, I find this fascinating because creativity in general, like a lot of people have misconceptions about it. And along kind of my journey, like I've kind of understood everybody is creative. Like human beings are creative. It's part of our genetic code that we create things. We create, from the earliest cave people who are creating cave art, like we are born and meant to create. But creativity kind of as a word has gotten a lot of different, I don't know, associations with it, that creativity is just for the arts, creativity is soft and fluffy, creativity is, people who are on drugs are creative. Like there's been all these very strange associations with creativity. And there's actually been resistance in engineering that I've observed about teaching creativity. And I've been like shocked by that. In fact, I remember there was one experience that I had. We were doing a workshop on creativity, and I was talking to a faculty member. I think he was computer science. And I said, "Oh, so and so, you should come to this workshop on creativity." And he looked at me and he said, "Why do I want my students to be more creative?" And I was like, why do you not want your students to be creative? I like shocked me that like that was even a question. And I realized that people don't have a good understanding of what it means to be creative. And our faculty are super creative. They're creative in their research, they're creative in their leadership, they're creative in all aspects of their life. But it's that idea that creativity is for someplace else, it's not for engineering, is something that surprises me. Um, in fact, like when you look at the engineering curriculum, there are only pockets where creativity is really in embedded in that curriculum. So like first year design classes, like at Penn State, we have this model where design is in the first year and it's in the senior year. Some of the majors have a little bit different of a model, but students come in and they take first year design, and then in their senior year they'll take capstone design. And for the most part, they're not getting design anywhere else. And most of their other classes within their major or their prerequisite classes don't offer any opportunity to be creative. And in fact, some of the research that showed that students will actually, senior students think that engineering is a less creative major as compared to first year students. So they basically, we said, do you think engineering is a creative major? Do you think engineers are creative? And first year students will say yes, and senior students less so. And I think that it's because they aren't really given the opportunity to be creative. They're not really shown how engineering is creative for the most part. Again, I'm generalizing. And I think that does engineering a disservice. And so it's been kind of one of my missions over the years is to really try to have more training on creativity. So we've done lots of workshops and things like that. And then we try to get at it at different ways as well. But leadership, it's a lot of being creative to solve problems and to figure out what to do next, and with the barriers and the constraints that we have. So I do think creativity is an important part of leadership and an important part of engineering.
So, how do you reframe that conversation so that it resonates with engineers?
We've actually done a few things over the years that when we've done creativity workshops, we've shown that creativity can be kind of thought of as a process. where you start with kind of framing the problem and then coming up with ideas and so forth in this kind of circular process. And most engineering faculty are very familiar with the design process. So when they see creativity as a process, they're like, oh, yes, and they get it. I think it's kind of like trying to speak their language a little bit and using the discourse that they're familiar with, but also telling them about those misconceptions and talking about how when they're doing their research, because a lot of faculty, the tenure track faculty, research is a huge part of their jobs, and talking to them about what creativity really is, that it's not just this fluffy thing in the arts and science, which is also doing them a disservice, but it's something that every human being has the potential to be creative.
And creativity is very much tied to innovation. And you've supported faculty through grants to try innovative approaches. From a leadership standpoint, how do you encourage experimentation without fear of failure?
So I think that's a really good question. And, I don't think we've really thought about failure that much in our grant process, but we also are pretty encouraging in general. So kind of the way that our grant process works, and it's morphed and changed a little bit over the years, but we have smaller grants that are, I would say, about 10, 15K or less. And then there are larger grants that might be 80,000, $100,000, which, you know, people listening might think that's not a huge amount of money, but for a faculty member doing a teaching related intervention or change in their class, like there are no other universities that are giving that level of money within a college. Like our peer institutions will be like, that's a lot of money. They might give like $500 grants or $1,000 grants. So these are, large teaching oriented grants. So especially for the larger grants, we will meet with all the faculty ahead of time because we want them to be successful. But we recognize that they might not have the expertise in teaching and learning or the social sciences. So when we meet with them, we often try to push their idea along a little bit further than maybe they had originally thought of. And honestly, like for me, like if faculty are engaging with their students in a way beyond chalk and talk, like writing on the board or on their, having PowerPoint slides and talking about them, if they're engaging the students in any way, then that's likely to be a success. Like even attempts at active learning are really shown to be powerful. There's so many like small things that you can do in a classroom that might not be that innovative, but small tweaks of just engaging with the students more. And so that's kind of where we're always trying to push our faculty is to engage more with the students in some way, which can be challenging because some of our classes are really big, but there's still ways that you can do it. So thinking about how to have them not be worried about failure, I think we just encourage them to try. And we also will, because of the way that the faculty experience is structured, faculty, in order to get tenure, to go from assistant professor to associate professor, they are reviewed by different committees on teaching, research, and service. And so we really don't want our super young junior assistant professors to be doing something that's so maybe out there and so innovative that there's a chance that it can reduce their teaching evaluation scores a lot. So small things, yes, big giant changes to their teaching that might have too much detriment on their teaching evaluations. We don't want them to do that right away. So some of our grants might be more for associate professors, those that have tenure, because we don't want them to risk, because that level of failure then is, you lose your job. But in terms of like what you're doing in the classroom, like small things can make a big difference. And if it doesn't go well, we also tell them, well, gather feedback from your students. And if it's not going well, then you need to pivot and you need to change. But we kind of keep in mind the greater structure of higher education, especially Penn State being a research-oriented institution. And we have to keep that in mind when thinking about things that we're funding.
Well, one of the most compelling examples of your work is how you've used physical space, specifically the art museum, to reimagine learning. When we come back, we'll dive into that project and what it revealed about leadership and learning. Don't go anywhere. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and my guest today is Dr. Sarah Zappe, whose work bridges engineering education, creativity, and leadership. Sarah, you helped curate a teaching gallery at the Art Museum with an arts and engineering theme. What was the vision behind that project?
This project was so incredible. I think it probably was the highlight of my entire career so far. So we have a brand new art museum on campus. It's the Palmer Museum of Art. It's been in existence forever, but this beautiful building, it's incredible. And I think they opened it in summer of 2024. The way it kind of came about is I saw that there was going to be a workshop on object-oriented learning at the Palmer, and it was before the Palmer was even going to reopen in the new space. So I was like, I want to go to that because number one, I want to see the space, but I have no idea what object-oriented learning is. So I want to learn more. And I was blown away. The space is incredible. It's beautiful. And one of the new changes with the new building is the Palmer created this teaching gallery, where any faculty and staff at the university can put in a proposal to curate a themed collection of objects. Because I've learned a lot about museum curation, to be honest, which is kind of fascinating. But every kind of art museum, they have most of what's on display, like it might be like 3 to 5% of their actual collection, their actual holdings. And so they have this massive collection that are typically not on display anywhere. And so the teaching gallery is an opportunity to show other objects, but also to be around a certain theme. And so I talked to the person that I met there and I said, I want to do something with art and engineering. And she's like, yes, because they didn't want it to just be art education types of things, or like, for example, their first teaching, actually, I think it was the second teaching gallery was about, I want to say art from the Himalayas. And it was beautiful. But like art and engineering is something that you don't think that much about. So I talked to my contact there and I'm like, I want to do this. And she's like, put in a proposal. And so I was like, I was so excited about it. And I gathered up a team of faculty members that I knew were also really interested in art and engineering. So Joe Cusimano, who's a professor of engineering science and mechanics, and Ben Fail, who is an architect by training, but teaches engineering design in our School of Engineering Design and Innovation. So kind of like both unicorns because they're well, Joe's an engineer, Ben's an architect, and then me, who's the non-engineer, non-scientist of the bunch. And we came together and we're like, how can we curate this thing that showcases how art and engineering relate? And we put together the gallery. It's called Structures, Systems, and Society. So the structures piece is really how art can be used in the engineering design project. So Ben has a project called the Crooked House that he's re-envisioning a home from the 1800s that's falling apart, and he's basically creating it once again out of concrete from molds that he's created from the original pieces of the house. It's pretty fascinating. And that is about prototyping, it's about structural components, it's about design. And then the systems piece, which uh, Joe Cure kind of was the lead on, was more about how both artists and engineers work in systems. We are all in a system, and there's systems can be beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. And we can learn a lot from both disciplines. And I took the lead on the society piece. And the society piece was how we can use art as a way, as a method of discourse for seeing both the good and the bad things that have come out of engineering. And so some of the objects that we chose for that portion of the gallery were a little dark. So for example, there's a photograph taken for the aftermath of Hiroshima and seeing the devastation there. Or there's one of these planes that are circling and from World War II. And the painting is very chaotic, yet it's beautiful. The colors are beautiful. There's one called Industrial Fresno, which is like a field, like a cornfield with a farm, but you can tell that it's like all the environmental damage that's happening. And so some of those did get a little dark, but they're also like this is where art can be really helpful, because thinking about the ethical impacts of engineering, the societal impacts of engineering is so important. And it's one thing to just talk about them, but it's another thing to see it. If we could talk about the atomic bomb and the damage that it does, but if you see it through an image, like it makes it more real. And so we had students that went through the gallery. We worked with instructors. We gave them a set of supplemental questions that they can use, that students can either go through as a course assignment or extra credit. And so there were a lot of classes that went up there. Our contact at the museum said there were constantly students in that gallery. But it's just been an incredible experience.
One of the things that you said is that art can prompt questions like, what does it mean to be an engineer? And that also does take into account these technical and ethical issues that you just mentioned. Why are these identity questions about what it means to be an engineer important for future leaders?
So, traditionally speaking, there have been these gatekeepers for both art and engineering is traditionally been the field of white men. Women were not really welcome or expected to become engineers, and if they were one of very few, and there were very few people of color. And most colleges recognize, like, in the field we need more engineers. Like, our society needs more engineers, and to get more engineers, to get more people with STEM expertise, we really need to tap into the whole population. But there's still these stereotypes that exist about what an engineer is, who can be an engineer. Like, we are conditioned to have men be scientists, to be engineers, and women to be caretakers. But trying to get more women, more people of color into the field is really a daunting thing, because of the conditioning that we have, and because the experience that students might have both in the K-12 system, and if they choose to enter an engineering major in the college, they might feel less welcome and less like they belong. And so using art as one way to have those conversations about who can be and should be an engineer can be really intriguing. We had one piece in the gallery that it was a wood carving called Alabama Biochemist. And it was a Black man who is surrounded by beakers and other like scientific stuff, as well as like plants and things like that. And it really speaks to like what is the nature of knowledge, because there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that we can really use that can be really helpful, that has been forgotten in some cases, that might be really incredible for scientific breakthroughs. But also, like, this person in this wood carving, it's very striking to look at it about, like, Mike, I have so many questions about it. Like, who is this person? What were they doing? Like, why do they have these beakers? What was the reaction of the people around them? Why did the artist choose to carve this? Is it based on a real person or not? Is it intended to inspire? Is it intended to have people just ask questions? But to me, it was just, it's so interesting. It's not a big piece of artwork, but it's so touching to look at it and just be like, you have this recognition of those gates that were up, that the gatekeepers had against women and people of color entering the academy. So I just find it fascinating that we can have and use artwork in a way to engage in those discussions. I also think that art can be a way to bring in other people because for me, like when I was growing up, like I didn't even know what engineering was. I definitely thought it was for men. I definitely thought it was not for someone like me. I still think I made the right decision in going into psychology, but I never gave it a second thought. It was like, nope, not for me. I didn't understand it. I did not understand what engineers do. Like my kind of thoughts were train engineer, work on cars, work on engines, or work on a computer all day. That's probably my stereotype of what an engineer does. And realistically, like almost every single thing that we touch has been touched along the way by an engineer, has been designed by an engineer, or a factory has been designed by engineers. It's incredible. Like our society is really dependent on people with this expertise. And if we don't confront those stereotypes, like we can be really missing out on other ways that engineers and those skills can improve our society. And so, like, a lot of the focus on what engineering is in the industrial military complex. But engineers are, also are used for theater productions. There's immersive art that engineers have designed. Like one of my favorites is like Meow Wolf, which now has like 6 or 7 different locations, which are these immersive art installations that are a collaboration between artists and engineers. And I think that by showing that engineering is not just the industrial military complex, that it can open up interest to other people. So I keep thinking, and I have a lot of work to do and research in this area still about all the ways that art can benefit how we think about engineering. And I'm just getting started on all this work.
Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about what it takes to lead with authenticity and learn more about Dr. Zappe's art-based wellness company, Kaleidoscope PA. Stay tuned. By partnering with Expressions of Leadership, you'll reach an audience of professionals passionate about leadership and growth. For sponsorship opportunities, please contact us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com. This is Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Zappe. Now, Sarah, you brought your authentic self to this role, as you talked about earlier. What did that require courage-wise?
It requires a lot. And I'm going to tell you a story about one time when I was not being my authentic self. And then it made me realize that that's not going to work for me. So my predecessor, and I know I've talked about him before, he was a fabulous mentor. He was wonderful. He can also have a little bit of an edge to him. And like when he disagreed with somebody, he was pretty quick to point it out. And sometimes it could be in a slightly hurtful way. And there was one time I was in a meeting with some faculty, not from Penn State, but at a conference. And they were talking about a topic that I actually knew a lot about. And they were like butchering it. And I was just like, I need to act like my mentor. I need to act like him. And I was like, nope, that's not right. And I was just like super rude and like trying to be like how he would express his opinion in a way. And I when I left that meeting, and I mean it ended up it was okay, but I just felt like I could feel it in my body. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was really mean to these people because I wanted to show off that I like actually knew it was a topic I actually really knew about. And it bothered me the whole day, the way that I treated those people because like this is a conference where of engineering educators, they don't have the social science background that I had. And just because I had it, it doesn't mean I needed to like almost belittle them for it. Like and it was something like, not to be, too judging of my predecessor, but he would do that at times, but then he would apologize because he would realize that he pushed it too far. And I was trying to model somebody that I wasn't. And it bothered me the whole day. And then that evening, I wrote an apology to that person. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was really rude to you. That was uncalled for. The project's great. And I tried to make amends. And then now that person is like a really good colleague. And so I realized, like, I can't do that. That is not who I am. I have to really just be myself and not try to be like somebody else. So the other thing that I'll say is that, and I think about this a lot, is when I was applying for this job, the director job, and people would say, "Oh, those are big shoes to fill for your predecessor." And I'm like, I know, they're big shoes to fill. He was great. He was in this role for 25 years. He really made this center what it is. And I'm like, I can't fill those shoes. And then I realized, I'm like, I completely am right. I cannot fill those shoes because I don't have his feet. Like, they are going to be different shoes. I will bring something totally different to this role that is a little bit softer. I really want to be authentic. I want to be kind. I want to try to really work on creating the college that is a community that I want to be a part of, where people are kind to each other, and a little bit of humility. So to me, I'm a different kind of leader, and I'm going to bring, and I think that's the case for anybody. If you're trying, you can't fill somebody else's shoes. It's impossible because you bring different things.
Mhm. And as a leader, you also have to make some difficult decisions.
Yeah.
How do your personal values show up when you're making these types of decisions?
Yeah. So yes, I do have to make some difficult decisions, and sometimes, the way I usually do it, and it's with the colleagues that I work the closest with. So I'll explain to them why I'm making that decision. Usually it's because I have a picture of the greater context that they may not have. Um, Sometimes it's lately, I'll be honest, like, there's been a couple of interesting, like, little tips in our office of people not getting along, which we haven't had. Like, we've had kind of an office where everybody generally gets along. Um, and those, so how to handle that is a challenge. And like, there's a bit of a structure here. So, like, I have reportees and they have reportees, and so forth. And so trusting that other people can handle those situations, and I only try to get involved like when it gets elevated to me. And I'm like, I'll give advice, but I'll be like, you can handle this, and you need to be able to handle this. That's part of your leadership expertise. So not like jumping in and saying, oh, like, I'll go and fix this now, or being like, no, this happened, it needs to be addressed, and this will be a good leadership opportunity for you. So those I actually will tell that person, I know you don't like to handle these types of things. I don't like to either, but it's a good leadership and growing experience. Like, I know what I would do. If you want to walk through how you might want to handle it, great, but I trust you. And like, giving that trust to that other person, and knowing that they need to have that experience to grow their leadership skills.
Now, I'd like to turn to your exciting creative project that you have in Kaleidoscope PA. You talked about how creativity and flexibility are really essential in your own life. At what point did that personal practice turn into Kaleidoscope PA, your arts-based wellness company? And what inspired you to launch it alongside your academic leadership?
Oh my gosh, this has been such a joy in my life. So during COVID, I took up watercolor painting. I always told myself my whole life that I can't draw, I can't paint. I was a maker, so I did things like sewing, embroidery. I did all the other things, but I always said art is not my thing. I can't do that stuff. And then I had just this kind of calling during COVID that I wanted to paint. And we didn't have that much else to do in our free time then. So I started painting like every day. And yeah, I painted a lot of things that aren't that aesthetically pleasing, but I loved it. And I just kept going and kept going, and then getting better and better. And it just was giving me so much joy. And one day I was having lunch with a woman who had been running the Penn State's entrepreneurship minor, and we would get together for lunch periodically. And I don't even know how the topic of side hustles came up, but she said I think she asked if I would ever, open any kind of company. And I said, I would someday I want to do something with my art. And she looked at me and she said, Sarah, she's like, you know what the secret is to starting a business? Just do it. And she like sent me all these resources. She's like, go talk to Penn State's accelerator program with Happy Valley Launchbox and look at all the programs that they have. And I was like, okay. And I looked it up and I don't think I ever would have done it without that kick in the butt. Um, but I did that. And the other thing that happened was kind of serendipitously again is the owner of this flower farm that I would go to pick my own flowers. She put a post on Instagram that she was like looking for people to teach things on the farm. And still remember the post. It was like, I don't care what it is, yoga, embroidery, painting. I just want to do cool things on the farm. Send me a note if you're interested. And of course, being like the academic that I am, I sent her like a 3-page proposal about doing this watercolor workshop. It was knowing her now, it was like totally over the top, way too much. But she was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was incredible. So we painted watercolor flowers in a flower field at sunset on a summer day. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. It was like the most incredible day. And then I was like, I could do this. Like, I know how to teach. That's my job. I know how to do a workshop. That's my job. And am I the best artist in the world? No, but I'm getting better and better and I'm improving my skills. And I know that with practice and training, I could do anything. And so I just kept going and going. And so I started this company and now I have partners all across central Pennsylvania. I'm fairly certain I taught at 9 different farms this year. I have to actually write it down and count, but I've done watercolor in a tulip field, peonies, dahlias. I've done it with lavender, 2 sunflower fields, mini goats. Oh no, sorry, mini horses and goats. It's so fun and silly, and I love it, and people love it. It's just been incredible. I also have places that are indoors for, winter time. So I work with some wineries in the area and a coffee shop and a maker space. And I'm like having so much fun. There are days that I'm like, what am I doing? Because I have, a full-time job and I have a dog and I have a son who's 17 and a partner and I'm like, what am I doing? But I'm like, it just gives me so much joy. So I'm just like, I'm going to keep going. And where it's going to go, I have some ideas, but part of that is going to be like wait and see and like trust. So actually yesterday I picked a word for 2026. My word for 2025 was create. My word for 2026 is trust and trust in the universe, trust in myself, and just let it go where it's going to go.
And what impact do you see these experiences having on people's well-being?
Surprisingly a lot, and this will make me tear up too because I'll get people all the time that'll be like, I took your workshop and now I bought paint and I paint all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like incredible. And like that's my goal is to like let people see that they are all artists, that no, we're not going to have art maybe hanging in the Palmer or another museum. And that's not the point. The point is that we're all creators. And there's all this research that shows that creating things with our hands, whether it's painting or drawing or gardening or cooking, like it's so beneficial to us. And I think we've been losing that in recent years, like with phones and screens and stuff, that we've kind of lost that, and like taking that back as a way to like embrace our humanity. And it's to me it just is so incredible that I'm doing this. Like if you told me 10 years ago I'd be doing this, I would be like, what are you talking about? But it's been so wonderful.
And you often say, I'll give you the tools and you paint whatever you want.
Yes.
How does that philosophy connect to how you empower others as a leader?
So I think that, everybody needs to find their own authentic self. So I do think that like when I paint, it is not like a traditional sip and paint where we're all going to paint a snowman. I give lots of examples, and some people may paint the exact example that I have, and that's totally fine. Some people I have learned love to be like, just tell me what to do. Like, I don't want to do my own thing. Just tell me what I need to do. Like, that's fine. You could do that. But we're there to play in the art classes. Like, it's play. It's like take back our childhood and take back that we're all artists. Because when we were 5, we didn't have a container of crayons in front of us, and we didn't say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to draw. We just did it. We just had fun and did it. But I think that's part of trusting yourself and just going there's an artist that I follow online, Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and she always says like it's just a piece of paper. So it really is. Like if you're just gonna put paint on a paper, what's the worst that happens? You don't like it and you throw it away. Like, okay, try again if you want to. Like nothing bad's gonna happen out of that. And so I think with thinking about this, how it relates to being a leader, it's that trust in yourself, and also like I was saying before, like trusting other people that they're going to do the right thing, and that I don't have to jump in and swoop in and take over. It's like try to give you what you need, and I could see where people I work with need to grow. um, I could see where like some of them, like that's where I was 15 years ago. And I know I see some of the same mistakes that they might be making that I made. And I'm just like, oh, I just want to be like, don't do that, like do this instead, but they have to figure it out on their own. So it's kind of like giving that feedback in a way that they can learn, but also like just trust that they'll figure it out on their own.
Well, we're going to take one final break. And when we return, we'll learn about Sarah's vision for the future, the legacy she hopes to leave, and end with some wisdom and whimsy. You won't want to miss it. We'd love for you to be a part of the Expressions of Leadership community. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and my special guest today is Dr. Sarah Zappe. Now, Sarah, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future, both professionally and personally?
This is a great question, and I kind of ask myself this question like every day. What is my vision? So I've been at Penn State for 21 and a half years. When I get to 25 years, I'll be able to opt into medical. I also have a 17-year-old who needs to get through college and will likely be going to Penn State or one of the campuses that we have. And so I'm like, what will happen? And maybe honestly, like I change my mind every day. And I also think I'm like, I still have time. And that's part of where this trusting that things are going to happen as they're supposed to. Um, there's a part of me that wants to take this art company to the next level. And I have a big vision of how to do that. And so I'm kind of slowly putting in steps on how to do this. Right now, it is a side hustle that, I teach a couple classes a month. They give me incredible joy. And I have a vision of where that can be to be a potential full-time job that can have a bigger impact in the community. But I'm also like, if I'm loving what I'm doing here, then do I want to give that up as well? So I'm like, part of it is like, I'm going to try to put those pieces into place so that I have the option of when I get to that point of being like, yes, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life.
And what legacy do you hope to leave?
So I think I have a couple in mind. Like in the College of Engineering, I really want this to be seen as a community that is caring. I've been reading some things about the caring university lately and really trying to change the culture to be one that is a little bit less traditionally masculine and I mean, honestly, the academic system in general, it's one that can be really brutal in terms of, publish or perish and not being that forgiving for people that if you have a family or if you have other needs. So really trying to promote a culture that is more caring. And I feel like I've been able to do that to some degree. And that's going to be my mission until I'm no longer at Penn State for sure. Um, my legacy for relating to my art company with Kaleidoscope PA, I want as many people as possible to recognize the artist that's inside of them. And so for me, it's like continuing to do these workshops and continuing to focus on how we can use the arts and wellness as a tool for wellness, as a tool for mental health, as a tool to bring people together. That's kind of where I want to leave my legacy in the town. Like my career has been very academically focused, and what's happened with Kaleidoscope PA that I didn't expect is how connected to the state college community that I've gotten. I didn't really know people outside of the academic community here, and I've met so many people and so many artists and just all these new connections that I didn't expect to have. And so I want to have a legacy relating to that as well. And I think that's starting. So I'll continue along with that.
Before we move into our final segment of the show, can you share how our audience can learn more about you and also your work, both at Penn State and through Kaleidoscope PA?
Sure. Well, my Kaleidoscope PA website is just www.kaleidoscopepa.com. I have a LinkedIn profile. So if you Google me, Sarah Zappe, on LinkedIn, that's a way to see kind of all the things that I'm doing. And then at Penn State, the Leonhard Center website is another way to see that. But I also have, Instagram, Facebook for Kaleidoscope PA. So, but I'd probably start at the website and then go from there.
And now it's time for our wisdom and whimsy segment, where I ask the guest to answer one advice question and one fun question. Let's start with sharing some wisdom. What advice would you give to leaders who want to bring more creativity and humanity into their work, but aren't sure where to start?
I think trust yourself. And I'm saying this because I've seen some people recently that like I had expected to bring more of that humanity in, and I could tell they're not being themselves. Like they're trying to be something else. And I think that's especially true. I don't know if I should generalize, but I feel like some women who are in this field, they're trying to be that more masculine model that we have as a leader. And in my head, I'm like, that's not why I want you in this position. I want you to bring yourself, and I don't want you to pretend to be somebody else. I don't want you to pretend to be this traditional masculine engineer. Like come in and bring who you are. Like, and especially as we get more women and people of color into leadership positions, like be who you are and don't try to be anybody else. In terms of being more creative, I think that again, kind of trust yourself and know that we are all creative because I think my pet peeve is when people are like, I'm not creative. I can't draw a stick figure. I can't do this. And I'm like, you're putting that into the universe. So if you say that you're not creative, you're not going to be creative. If you say that this piece of paper that you're going to paint on is going to be a disaster, it probably will. Like just kind of give yourself a little bit more trust, a little bit more confidence in yourself. And again, kind of that what's the worst that can happen thing. In the case of creating art, it's a piece of paper. And when you're trying, when you're being a leader in your professional setting, I think it's just kind of having that confidence that you're enough as yourself and come in like that. And don't try to be somebody else.
And now for the fun question. If your current season of life were an art medium, paint or clay or collage or movement, what would it be and why?
It is definitely a collage. So I feel like I have all these pieces of my life and like little different segments all over the place. I have my engineering piece and I have my watercolor and my art, and then I have my wellness. And then kind of surrounding all of this, I have my partner and my family. And it's all these pieces that are kind of separate, but they're all starting to come together into one beautiful image. And like I also think about like the idea of a kaleidoscope. And it's something when I picked this name, I kind of picked it because I'm like, oh, I love a kaleidoscope. It's pretty. And I didn't really think about it. And somebody was like, well, the kaleidoscope is perfect because you're taking all these little broken pieces of things that by themselves might not be beautiful. And then you put together and they're just this one beautiful thing. And so and this has really happened in the last like 2 years, I would say, that all these pieces of my life that seem very disconnected are all coming together in kind of weird synchronous ways. And I kind of absolutely love it. But like my work with entrepreneurship and my research on creativity and the watercolor and engineering. And it's kind of been bizarre in some ways, but it's also been just beautiful. And so I would say it's not quite like that beautiful finished piece yet, but it's getting there. And I'm really excited to see where it goes next.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on Expressions of Leadership today. You really bring a holistic and grounded and deeply human approach to leadership. And I'm so grateful for the way that you shared your story and your work and the intention behind how you show up in the world.
Thank you so much for having me. This was just a delightful conversation, and I really enjoyed it so much.
And thank you to our listeners for spending this time with us. If this conversation sparked something for you, an idea, a question, or even a moment of reflection, I hope you'll carry it forward. Share this episode with someone who might need it, and be sure to follow Expressions of Leadership wherever you listen so you don't miss future conversations. Until next time, I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, reminding you that leadership lives in how you lead, how you create, and how you care for yourself and others. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.